Hi everyone, good morning and welcome back. Today's session is going to be a little bit special. We're going to be working on yoga foundations. So right back to basics. This class is going to run a little bit more like a workshop and is absolutely perfect if you are brand new to yoga, or maybe you've had a practice for a while but just kind of want to touch back in on some alignment tips and tricks and just kind of reaffirming our connection to the practice. So we're going to go ahead and hop right in it. Oils in the diffuser today. I've got 5 drops of bergamot. I have 3 of sandalwood and 2 of pine. So it's a new blend I haven't done before, and it's not bad. You know, it's a little earthy, a little bit floral, and it blends really well. So we're just going to hop right into this. For those of you that have never practiced yoga before, what is yoga, right? I'm sure you've seen the poses on Instagram and all of these very skinny people at the beach doing handstands. And while that is a really awesome part of yoga and maybe a really great result that you can get from having a regular practice, doing those beautiful inversions, it's not the point of why we do yoga. So let's just start with the word, right? Let's break it right down. So in Sanskrit, which is the language of yoga, it translates to yoke. So not like an egg yolk, but like a yoke of oxen. So like a union. And we kind of break that down or describe that in a few different ways. It can be interpreted in a few different ways in the yoga practice. I like to primarily think of it as the connection between mind, body, and spirit. But as we start to get into the more physical aspect of yoga, the yoga asana practice, which is where we do the movements and the postures, I like to think of it as the union between your breath, your movement, and your intention. And we're going to come back to this as we start to move through this practice here. So yoga, traditionally, yoga asana practice, actually scratch that. Traditionally, yoga came about as a meditative state. So dhyana yoga is what we call it today. And it was just being able to quiet the mind, to find this sort of inner connection and inner peace. And if you haven't ever meditated before, I'm sure you kind of get the gist of it, where you find a comfortable seat and close your eyes and try to do some internal introspective work for a bit. And if you've ever tried that, then you know that it can be very, very hard to sit still, right? Not just because we're feeling antsy, but because physically in the body, we might be feeling tight in the shoulders, or it might be really difficult to hold the spine upright for so long without slouching. So yoga asana practice, the postural part of yoga, came about to help prepare the body to be able to sit for these long periods in meditation. So when we're actually doing our asana practice, while in our westernized culture, it's a great workout and it is a wonderful way to kind of bring just a little bit of peace into your life. And a lot of people go to their 60-minute class and go home, and that might be the only yoga that they have in their whole week, right? But when we want to take it a little bit farther and go beyond just a physical practice or just beyond an exercise practice, right? Then we start to apply yoga to our daily lives, and maybe we incorporate meditation, or maybe we find ourselves being able to step back in a moment at work or in a social situation and reassess maybe our reactions or the way that we are approaching a certain situation, right? So it really allows us and affords us an opportunity to be self-reflective and patient and, just really thoughtful. So as we get started here, you're going to notice that I use some props. Like I said, if you're new to yoga, if you've never done this before, you might not have some of these props available to you. But if you want to make this part of your life, I definitely recommend investing in at least 1 or 2 yoga blocks. If you don't have one available today, that's okay. Maybe you have a large textbook. I've even used like a full can of oatmeal, like those circular ones, something that you can put a little bit of weight on, because we're going to be using it to support us to bring the floor a little bit closer when we come into some of these standing postures. And you can use it for so many things. You see me sitting up on a cushion right now. We can also sit up on the block, besides just using it to help with our balance. We're also going to be making use of a yoga strap today, another really worthy investment. And if you don't have one, don't worry. You could use a belt. You could use an old necktie. I've even like taken a strip of like canvas fabric and just ripped that into a long length. Today specifically, we're going to be using it to stretch out our legs. So you want it long enough where you can have the strap around the ball of the foot and enough length coming back so that when we're reclined on our backs, you can still extend your legs straight out. And just making sure the material you're using is soft, because you will be using this on your skin, right? So there's options. You may want like a blanket or a cushion for the end of practice when we come through our final relaxation posture, Shavasana. Sometimes it's nice just to have a little bit of support if you're not used to lying down flat on the mat. And just, as we move through the practice and heat begins to build in the body, by the time we come down to Shavasana, the body begins to cool down. So it can get a little bit chilly because we will be there for several moments. And sometimes having a blanket nearby just helps make it a little bit cozier. So let's get started with some breath work. So if you want to come down onto your mat in a comfortable seated position, you see me, like I said, I'm up on a meditation pillow right now. But if you prefer to sit down flat on the mat, that's perfectly fine. What this does is just helping to get my hips a little bit higher than my knees. So that way I'm not fighting against gravity, right? So even though my knees might not be on the floor right now, with gravity and with relaxing, I can start to soften through the legs and they can start to come a little bit closer to the floor. When we first start a yoga practice, you might be a little bit tight in the hips. And this is why the knees pop up, because we're really tight up in these hip joints. But over time, once we learn to relax, things can start to soften down. And gravity helps, right? Sometimes we fight against it, but it can be our friend. So we're going to be starting just finding a connection to the breath. So finding your most comfortable seat, and go ahead and shift your weight back and forth a couple of times here. Those little bony protrusions of the bum, we refer to those as the sit bones. Just take a moment to think about the left side and the right side, and then see if you can find a little bit of center, a little bit of balance between them. That's going to help the spine come into position here. Allow the belly to be soft, but take a breath in and feel yourself extend up through the spine, through the crown of the head. And then keep that extension, but keep the belly soft. Relax the shoulders, relax the face. You can rest your hands, maybe hands on the thighs, or maybe hands in the lap, wherever you're going to feel comfortable. We're going to spend a few moments here. If it's okay with you, go ahead and soften or close your eyes. And then just take a moment to observe, what do you feel within the body right now, physically within the body? Where are you feeling sensation? And this could be any sort of sensation, tightness or tension, or maybe looseness or space, right? I'm going to ask a lot of questions. There are no right or wrong answers. This is really just about you and your moment and how you feel. And then you can allow your awareness to sort of just scan up and down the body here. Sometimes that helps to kind of just pinpoint where and what we might be feeling. I like to start at my feet and just checking in around the feet and the ankles. And then starting to move up through the legs. My hamstrings are a little bit sore from my practice yesterday, so I can feel a little bit of tightness there. I'm just acknowledging, not trying to make anything a certain way. And then moving up into the hips. Maybe we feel a little bit tight or tense, or maybe we're feeling good today and we're starting to relax and the legs begin to soften down. And then moving up through the trunk of the body. Notice if you started to clench the belly again, let the belly be soft. We're not trying to win any swimsuit awards right now, right? So don't suck it in. That's a fight or flight response. We want to relax. Bringing awareness up through the hands and the arms. And as we move up into the shoulders, a very tense and tight area for many people. So just take a moment, maybe thinking about the tops of the shoulders. And then moving into the upper back at the base of the neck, and then up through the neck itself, and just seeing how all of these areas feel, what you feel, and maybe you feel nothing, and that's okay. That is totally fine. We're just trying to focus the mind on becoming aware. So we'll take a few more moments just scanning up and down through the body. The breath doesn't have to be any certain way. We'll come to that in a moment. And then slowly begin to notice your breath. Just the natural rhythm, the natural pace, where you feel the breath moving the body. Obviously, we probably feel it in the belly and in the chest. But think about where the breath enters into the back of the throat. Think about the sound of the breath that you may hear. And then thinking about the breath, it's bringing oxygen right into the body. So maybe starting to feel some sensation starting to arise and awaken in the limbs, the arms and the legs, as we really draw our focus to our breathing. And this is going to lead us into something I do at the beginning of every class, which is some deep breathing cultivation that will help to lead us throughout the practice. So we're going to be making our way into it gradually. So slowly we're going to start building on each breath. So finding a little more expansion as you breathe in, and a little more length as you breathe out. So we're using control over each moment of the inhale and the exhale. And it's easiest to do this to a count. So evening out the breath here, perhaps we build the breath where we inhale to a count of 5 or 6, and then exhale to the same 5 or 6. And you may be able to hear my breathing right now. And I'm using a special form of yogic breath called the Ujjayi, or the victorious breath. And it's taking the breath to the back of the throat. It's not quite a snore, but it's the same action as though you were to take a mirror and try to fog it up with your breath. But we're using some control over it. So it's a long, slow draw in and out. And this breath helps us to keep control and awareness over each breath. I always think that the mark of a really good yoga class, coming from the teacher's perspective, is if I can hear everyone breathing. And I don't mean that everyone is out of breath. I mean that I can hear people using this breath, finding the control within themselves. We're going to take 5 more of these deep breaths. And I really want you to think about where you feel this breath coming into the body. And where you feel it releasing. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here. Last exhale. Slowly connect again now with your natural rhythm. And bring it back to that easy pace. So the deep breathing exercise we just did, as we take those big inhales, what we're doing is allowing more oxygen to enter the bloodstream. And that's actually going to help to energize us for the practice, right? It's also helping to, as we calm through the body, bring oxygen throughout. So some of those tight areas, we might be able to send a little bit of more oxygen, a little bit more blood flow, and start breaking up the tension, breaking up stagnant energy, right? And as we take those long exhales, what we're doing is calming the nervous system. So anytime you're feeling really anxious or stressed, I particularly do this when I'm sitting in traffic because I get pretty nervous. I come back to this deep breath. I do it to a count, maybe a shorter count, maybe a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it really does help to calm everything down. Plus it's bringing in good oxygen for the body. So we're still seated here on our mat. Hopefully we're finding ourselves in a little more of a Zen state, right? And we're going to start to just incorporate some slow movement by rolling out the shoulders. So very slowly, as we inhale, we're going to draw the shoulders up to the ears. And then exhale, slide them down the back. As we do this, think about the shoulder blades themselves, the bones of the upper body, where you start to feel the shoulder blades spread across the back, and then where you feel them start to come together, maybe as we bring the shoulders back and down. At the bottom of the exhale, we're going to reverse the direction. Still moving nice and slow. Inhale, bring them up. Exhale, forward and down. The bottom of this exhale, we'll begin to alternate each shoulder. So starting whichever shoulder you like, we'll bring it up. As it comes down, we'll lift the opposite shoulder. So really slow. And still breathing. You don't quite have to match the breath to the movements here, but still maintaining controlled breathing. And you can continue to use that Ujjayi breath throughout the practice. You just may notice the breath doesn't have to be quite as deep or as full as the breathing we were just doing. That was snow falling off my roof. And we're going to reverse this direction. So still alternating, moving slowly. And as we alternate these shoulders, you're going to feel the stretch start to come up through the side body and start to expand through the rib cage. So we're just slowly begin to wake everything up. Slowly come to stillness, find your center, and we're going to be stretching out through the neck. So take a deep breath in without pulling in the belly. Feel the spine grow tall. Shoulders relaxed. Exhale, we're going to lower the chin to the chest. We're not yanking the head down, but we're gently relaxing it because you're going to really feel the neck muscles start to turn on. This is where we're using gravity here, right? We just want to be hanging the head, not forcing it, looking down toward the floor of the mat. Shoulders relaxed, belly relaxed. And then breathing again here. It takes time to open up space, especially in some of these muscle groups that tend to be a little bit tighter. So allowing yourself these extra moments and just breathing, this controlled breathing, can really make a difference in opening up. We're going to begin some movements with the breath again. We're going to be making little half circle motions very slowly. So as we inhale, we're going to roll the head to the side, drawing an ear up and over the shoulders. Shoulders are still relaxed. And then exhale, rolling the head back down. Chin comes back to the chest. And inhale to the opposite side. Ear comes up and over the shoulder. And then exhale, dipping it back down. So very slowly moving back and forth, Thinking about these different sides of the neck and the upper shoulders, the traps muscles, that we start to feel sensation arise in as we move the head back and forth. And if you feel particularly tight in any one spot, maybe pausing. For me, it's right here. So I'm going to pause here and just take a couple extra breaths. It might not completely alleviate the tension, but at least I'm giving it an extra moment to stretch out. And then continuing the half circle. This time I'm going to keep my ear up and over the shoulder. You'll notice my gaze isn't down toward the floor anymore. Ears over the shoulder, and I turned my gaze neutral, so I'm looking forward. Head is just hanging to the side, and now this whole side of my neck can stretch out all the way down to the top of the shoulder blade. Shoulders are still relaxed, belly is still relaxed. I'm still breathing. And on my next inhale, I'm going to very gently, slowly bring my head back through center. Shoulders stay down. And exhale, gently dipping the opposite side over the shoulder, allowing the opposite side of the neck and shoulder to stretch out. So you'll notice that we didn't roll our head along the back of the neck, and we don't want to do that because you can compress and actually do more damage to the muscles and the vertebrae back there. So whenever I do my neck stretches, we roll from side to side in the front. And then you can do these sort of like little rainbow arches, side to side, shoulder to shoulder. We don't want to drop the head back. Inhale, coming back through center. And then exhale, relax, soften a little bit. So before we start to move here, I just want to talk a little bit about movement of the spine. And we have really incredible spines. And the mark of a good yoga practice I learned in my teacher training is any sequence designed to allow you to move the spine 6 ways. That's not to say that every awesome class is going to do that, but just a really good all-around class that's going to help you target movement and action and spinal health will allow you to move the spine in those 6 ways. And what are these 6 ways? Well, I can demonstrate on the wrist. We'll also demonstrate through the spine, but it's funny because our wrists also happen to do this. So taking my hand, we have forward bending. We have backward bending. 1, 2. We have twisting from left into right. There's 3 and 4. And then we have lateral bending, side to side, 5 and 6. So our spine does that too. And we're going to move through some seated ways how we do this with the spine. But you can really do it in any position, particularly on your back. We can do it in some of the standing postures. And that's where the yoga practice, for teachers at least, it gets to get really creative. Like, how many incorporations of this 6 spinal movement can I put into one class? So we're going to start here in a seated position. I'm going to invite you now, if you are sitting up on anything, just to take it out of the way so that we are flat down on the mat. And if sitting in a cross-legged position is too much for you and you want to sit up on the knees, that's perfectly fine. Some of you with knee issues, I invite you to keep a block or a pillow underneath just so you're not straining so much on the knees, which we will be talking about very shortly. So we're going to set up for a nice easy twist. I'm going to come into a cross-legged position, one foot in front of the other. So I generally lead twists one of 2 ways, and I usually use a sort of like coming into it in increments. So we use several breaths to come into our deep part of our twist. So I'm going to lead you through that first, but there's one other way that I will lead you through in a moment. So I'm going to start with my hands on my legs. As I take a breath in, again, I'm not sucking in the belly, but I'm growing tall through the crown of the head. And on my first exhale, starting at my waist, I'm going to twist to the side, whichever side you like. And then I'm going to stop. I'm going to take another breath in. I'm going to grow tall. As I exhale, now I'm going to bring the twist into my belly, starting to deepen to the side a little bit. You'll notice my upper body still staying relatively neutral. Another inhale, grow tall. Exhale, this time twisting, bringing it into my chest. Inhale, lengthening up. This time bringing it up into the shoulders. Breathing in. Now I can start to turn maybe my head and neck, looking to the side, not straining. Every inhale, I'm growing tall. I'm not deepening my twist anymore. And my eyes are looking all the way to the left. I'm twisting to the left, so I'm incorporating a little bit of eye twisting in here. Or eye yoga. We can't really twist the eyes. That's silly. So one more big breath, nice and tall. Coming out the way I came with one exhale. Head turns, shoulders turn, belly, waist, back to center. Breathing here. Notice the sensation within the body. And as we get ready to move into the other side, I invite you to reverse the cross of the legs if it feels okay and if you're in this position. This just helps the upper body kind of the lower body stay even as we twist into the upper body. So coming back to this neutral position, taking a breath in, nice and tall. Exhale, starting at the waist, twisting to the side. Inhale. Exhale into the belly. Inhale. Exhale up into the chest. Inhale. Exhale, moving into the shoulders. You can see my back hand is moving positions here as I go deeper. Finally, the head and neck. And head and neck can be optional. We don't always have to twist there if we're feeling tight in the neck. Now I'm going to hold for a couple breaths and incorporate my eyes, looking all the way to the right this time. Relax the hands, but use them as support. One hand on the leg, one hand behind you. One more breath in, nice and tall. Exhale, untwisting, moving the head first. Shoulders, belly, waist, back through center. Sit with that sensation, breathe. So another form of twist that is also really great, and I'm going to just demonstrate one, is where we take that big inhale, growing tall, and then we use the entire exhale to come into a twist. So generally, as you start to deepen your practice and your spine gets more comfortable with twisting, I invite you to include that more, where we just take that big breath in. Exhale, I'm still starting at the waist, but I'm moving into the full twist, looking to the side. Breathe in. Exhale, back to center. Same way, we're just using less breaths, but doing it in increments really allows you to lengthen up and prepare for each succession of twisting. So now we're going to I invite you to bring your legs back to their regular position if this is feeling uncomfortable for you. So we twisted. Now we're going to do some lateral side bending. Take one hand to the mat or floor beside you. Reach the opposite hand out to the side. As we inhale, we're going to lift that hand up overhead. And then exhale, bend into this elbow, the hand that's on the mat, and then reach the lifted hand over to the side. I'm bending into the elbow here, but you'll notice I'm not dipping my torso down. If I do this, what I'm doing is compressing into this flexed side. I'm bending into this elbow so I can press the mat away with that supporting hand and still find length up through the flexed side of my side body here. So obviously you're going to feel big stretch up this side, through the ribs, through the shoulder, through the arm. And that's what we're targeting, but we just want to, when we do these sort of dualistic movements, actions, and stretches, we just want to make sure that we're aware of both sides. Now I'm grounding down into the hip bone of the arm that's lifted, and that's just so I can get a little extra stretch, right? And then I'm going to take my lifted hand here and just flip the palm to face the back of my room. That's going to really send the energy all the way up the side body, through the arm and out through the hand and the finger. The fingers stay actively reaching to the side. And another big thing that I notice people doing here, my chin is not dropped on my chest. We want room for the breath in the throat here. If we're closing off the throat, how is the breath going to travel into the rest of the body? And you're going to hear me say that a lot. So one more inhale. Exhale, maybe reach just a little farther. Start to power up your belly, so feel it start to strengthen up here. As we take our next breath in, we're going to reach both hands up, nice and slow. Look up to the hands, they can meet. And exhale, bring the hands back down to the heart. Sit with the sensation. Notice what you feel on that stretched side. And once again, I invite you to reverse the cross of your legs so we can do the opposite side. So taking the opposite hand to the floor mat. On an inhale, we'll reach the other arm up overhead. Exhale, bend into that supporting elbow as we extend to the side. Again, we're pressing the mat away, grounding into this opposite sit bone, and finding that big extension up through the side. Chin is lifted. We're not looking up to the ceiling, but chin is off the chest. Palm flips to face the back of the room. And then breathing here. Allow this space, this expansion to come all the way up through that side body. And then notice if you're clenching the legs and really tight, just take a breath here, relax. They don't have to reach the floor, but just start to soften. Start to firm up your belly on an inhale, reaching up slowly with both hands. Look up. Exhale, hands coming into the heart. Sit with that sensation. Breathe. So for our little back bend and forward bend here that we can do with our spine, we're going to move through some seated cat-cows. You can stay with your legs crossed in this position or move to your more comfortable position. We're going to start with hands on the knees, and you can also do this sitting up on your knees. And what we're doing is moving the spine back and forth. And you see this most of the time on hands and knees, the cat-cow position, but we can do it seated as well. So when we breathe in, we want to think about we want to root down through our tailbone at all times, right? So we want to feel that tailbone rooting down. And it's not so much that we're pushing ourselves forward as it's a lift of the chest. And this is actually going to be our back bend, because as we lift the chest and start to pull the shoulders back and put the head up, what we're doing is creating a little bend in the upper back. That's where we generally almost always want to target our back bends, is into the upper back, not the low back. Although it may seem easier to bend into the low back, it actually can put a lot of strain on those low back muscles if you aren't doing it properly. So we always want to think about this big lift coming from the chest and targeting the upper back. As we round back to come into our forward bend, this time we want to be pushing back outward through the spine. We're not just compressing down into a little ball, but we're extending the spine back. You'll feel the shoulder blades come forward, and you can lower the head. So hands to the knees, tailbones rooted down. As I breathe in, I'm going to lift the heart, shoulders back, looking up. So it's not a huge movement. Exhale, I'm going to feel my navel pull in, but I'm not compressing down. I'm feeling as though there's a string in the center of my back, pulling my spine backward. Chin can tuck. Inhale, extending up, lifting. And exhale, feeling it pull back. Breathing in. And exhale. And in. And exhale. We're going to do 2 more rounds. Breathe out. Last round. And release. Inhale, bring yourself back into center. And soften. Sit with that sensation for a moment. Maybe close or soften the eyes. Think about what you feel. Think about how the spine feels, right? We just moved it those 6 ways. Maybe you feel almost a little more tense because you might have done some movements you've never done or haven't done in a while. Well, that's okay. Pinpoint where you feel that most sensation, right? And think about that next time you come into these stretches. Maybe not going as hard. Maybe taking an extra breath when you feel that spot start to turn on. So we're going to be moving from here into starting to bring some stretch into the legs. We did a lot into the upper body so far, so now let's start to work into the lower body. And we're going to be taking our strap or whatever sort of strap material you have, and we're going to be coming into an extended legged position here. So first thing we want to do is we extend the legs. Let's give them a nice little shake. Just shake them right out. We haven't done anything with them yet, so wiggle them around, bounce the knees, flop the feet around. And then before we come into position here, I always like to make sure my pelvis is tilting forward. You see, as I naturally just came into this position, you might see a few things that, yes, this is what the body naturally did, but I'm not in very good alignment. I'm slouching, right? My spine is very rounded. My belly isn't engaged. And my tailbone is tucking underneath me, pushing forward. So my spine is not long. What we want to do is create length in the spine. So I like to move any flesh of the bottom out of the way, so that my pelvis is slightly tilted forward. And again, those little sit bones down there are pressing down into the mat. I can feel both of them down there. So you can see, although I'm still not maybe engaging so much into the upper body, I'm at least in a better position through the spine here. And this automatically helps to tuck the belly in. I'm not compressing in because, again, that's going to make me slouch, but I'm just having a very slight engagement through the belly. So we're going to be taking the strap around the balls of the feet. I'm going to start with a soft bend to my knees because, like I said, we haven't really done much with the legs today. I have the strap in both hands, and I'm sure if you've never done yoga, you've seen a lot of pictures of people just like reaching for the feet and they're flopping right down on top of the legs. We'll get there eventually. We're not going to do that today. What we want to do is think about extension rather than folding. So many people, when they come down, are too busy trying to get their nose to their knees. And what we actually want to be striving for here is bringing our nose to the toes. Super easy to remember that one. So, and we also want to think about leading with the heart. If anything, we want to get the heart closer to the knees and the nose closer to the toes. So we have a strap in each hand. I have my nice tall spine. I'm going to take a breath in. And then I'm going to start using the strap to pull myself forward. You're going to see I'm not going to come down too far because I'm going to move my hip bones back just a little bit. I want to make sure my tailbone is rooting down in the back so that I can find this axial extension through the spine forward. And again, I'm not coming down too far. I'm using the strap as a guide. I still have a soft bend to my knees. They're slightly lifted off the mat here. And as I pull myself closer toward the belly, toward the thighs, I'm still looking toward the toes. My shoulders are not hunching up, they're still softening back, and my chin is lifted from the chest. I'm just going to breathe here for a few moments. As we start to breathe, create, and open up space here, you may be able to start softening the backs of the knees toward the mat. Sometimes at the beginning of the practice, when we come into these first folds, I like to just pedal the knees up and down. So while it's important to do these forward fold stretches with a nice straight spine, there is a moment when you're allowed to just round down. And we've been here extending for a few moments now. I'm still nice and tall through the spine. Hips are coming back, tailbone rooting down, crown of the head forward. And I feel as though I've created a bit of space. So I'm going to start to soften my knees closer to the mat. They don't have to be completely flush with the mat. They can still be softly bent. I'm going to take one more breath in, get a little bit more extension. And then I'm going to let go of my strap and slowly release myself down, bringing the belly first. And then gently allowing my spine to release, starting to hang my head down, shoulders forward. Your hands can just rest to the floor here. I have really long arms, so if without straining, if you want to reach for the ankles or maybe the feet, But that's not the goal of the practice today. We're just softening here, so you can always rest your hands right on the floor. Release yourself down. You may find more space opens up and you can start straightening the legs a little bit closer to the mat. Again, they don't have to be completely straight. And you'll notice my feet are still flexed. Even though the strap is gone, I'm still maintaining the flex in the feet, and that's going to help bring the stretch all the way down to the calves and the ankles. So we're going to be rounding up from here. So I want you to keep your head hanging down, shoulders forward. Hands are on the mat framing the legs. We're going to keep that hang in the upper body. But as we inhale, we'll drag the hands back toward the hips. Feel the belly pull in. We're going to begin rounding the spine upward. So as we start to lift the head, shoulders will come up to the ears. Feet are still flexed. And then exhale, allow the shoulders to slide down the back. This brings us right into staff pose. So my legs are extended, my feet are flexed, my spine is nice and long, shoulders relaxed, belly engaged, right? This is beautiful. Staff pose right here. My hands can be resting on the floor, maybe fingertips. And what we're doing, it kind of looks like I'm just sitting here, but with this full engagement of the body, and we're going to talk about this again when we come into mountain pose, is actually making me work. You're going to see me start to shake. You might be able to hear it in my voice a little bit. Especially as we lift our hands off the floor, keeping the shoulders relaxed. We can start to squeeze the elbows in. Notice if you're puffing your chest forward like I am right now, try to neutralize the spine by keeping that low belly tucked in. Chin is still lifted from the chest. I'm really shaking now, and I'm going to release in a moment. Take a breath in, and then soften, exhale. Beautiful, right? Really easy. We just sat there, but you really worked for it. So before we start to move into some of these other postures here, I want to talk a quick minute about the knees. So a lot of people have knee problems, and we really want to avoid creating more knee problems. So thinking about the anatomy of the knee for a minute here, and a lot of yoga postures, you're going to hear us say to flex the feet. And this is to really help keep the knee safe, because anytime that your toes are pointing down, what you're doing is finding extension through the tendons and the muscles here, which means that they could be compromised, right? If there was any sort of weird jostling or movement. So when the feet are flexed, we're foreshortening the muscles, and we're kind of bringing them into a little bit more of a stabilizing posture, which is really great when you're doing stretches like a hip opener, like figure 4 with the legs crossed. If my foot was pointing like this, I can already feel that strain in the knee from having my hip open to the side. But once I flex my foot, I'm foreshortening that muscle. There's less room to compromise the tendon. So coming back up here. The only thing we really want to worry about when we have that flexion of the foot is when we're coming up into some low lunge or standing posture. So just to demonstrate for a moment, I'm going to come into my low lunge. My left leg will be back, my right foot forward. Obviously, with the foot on the mat, we're automatically flexing the foot, right? So we're foreshortening the muscles up to the knee. But when we do this, because these muscles are foreshortened, we don't want to strain them, right? Because there's only so much give that they have when we have that flex of the foot. So anytime we're in this low lunge position, or coming into some of these standing postures like this high lunge, we want to make sure the knee does not go past the ankle. This is very important. If the knee starts to come past the ankle, you're really starting to compromise the tendons here. I believe, what is it, the anterior, the ACL and the medial, the MCL, they can be really, really compromised. So because they're already foreshortened and you're pressing forward, you're really starting to pull on them. So what we want to do here is make sure that the knee is always stacking on top of the ankle, or we can push back a little bit here and making sure that the ankle is past the knee, more closer to the top of the mat. So just please keep that in mind throughout any of your exercises, especially you people that like to do squats. It's really important to keep that weight in the heels. When we keep the weight in the heels, then we don't shift the weight forward. The knees don't tend to go past the ankle as much. So just a little something to keep in mind. And we're going to be moving from here into a tabletop position. So join me on your hands and knees. And before we really get moving here, you can place your strap off to the side for now. I have my 2 blocks, and I have them at the top of my mat, one on each side, just in case as we start to move, I want to grab one at any point. I invite you to do so as well. And again, if you don't have a block, if you're using your oatmeal container or maybe a box with something in it, like a sturdier box, or even a big textbook, like a dictionary or something, that's fine. Just make sure they're within grabbing distance. So coming onto our hands and knees, when we come into table, we want to make sure that the hips are stacking over the knees and that the shoulders are coming down over the wrists. If being on your knees is a little too much for your knees, we can always double up our mats. You see I have a rug, and a mat. I have a very thick mat also because my knees are sensitive. We can also take our mats and give them a little extra folding over here for a little extra cushion. Of course, you will have to move it back into position once we start to move. So sometimes doubling up your mat is very, very helpful, even if it's just a cheap mat you're using underneath. So hips are over the knees. Shoulders are over the wrists. I'm going to take a moment and look back between my legs. These little calves and feet here, I'm going to try to tuck them away behind my thighs so I can barely see them. Then I'm going to look forward. I'm not looking up. I'm not looking back anymore. My neck is neutral. And my spine, I'm not dipping down, right? Bad posture. I'm not clenching right up, because we'll come into those positions for our cat-cows in just a moment. But my belly is slightly tucked in, and my low back is nice and long here, broad through the tailbone. We'll move through some cat-cow. Actually, first we're going to stretch out the wrists, something I do every single day. I don't want to generalize, but a lot of women I know, including myself, have petite wrists, right? They're very small. I have huge hands. Like, we'll talk about this another time. I have ginormous hands, but I have really small wrists, and they don't often get a lot of exercise. I used to be a bowler, so I used to have one of those squeezy grip things. Don't know what happened to it, but my wrists are not as strong as they used to be, so I stretch them out every single day. It might not be a strengthening exercise, but at least giving them a stretch, working out all those little kinks is really, really, really helpful, especially as we start to move into some plank positions in downward facing dogs. Back in table, I'm spreading my fingertips, and I'm just going to circle around my hands. It's as easy as that. I'm not pressing down into the mat too hard. I'm just gently circling around. And this might feel a little weird on your knees, so you might not want to make as big of an action in the hips as I am. I like a larger action because my wrists are a little more flexible now, so I need to kind of move around a little bit more to get them a good stretch. But for you, it might be nice just to press back and forth. So from here, we're going to continue to stretch out the wrists. I'm going to turn my inner wrists to the center line of the mat, fingertips to the long edge. And same thing here, just gently circling around. Not pressing down too hard. Maybe just pressing back and forth, because as we change the position of the hands here, you're really going to start to feel some different things turn on up into the forearms, maybe even up into the shoulders. This round, I'm going to turn my fingertips to the center line of the mat, wrists to the long edges, and circle it out. You'll see I move around in both directions. Again, just little movements, anything that's going to feel good. We don't want to feel pain or strain. And this should feel nice. So this last one is kind of awkward. Bring your hands back to center. And then we're going to flip the fingertips around so the fingers face the knees, wrists forward. And this can be kind of intense, right? So we can do one hand at a time. If it feels okay, try both. And for this, I just like to gently move back and forth here, not as big of a movement. And it's kind of fun. You can look down at your forearms, and you can see that the muscle of the forearm in your dominant hand is fairly large, a lot larger than your less dominant hand. Just kind of a fun thing to look at. Human anatomy. So just a few little back and forth movements here. And if you did one hand at a time, just make sure they feel even. Both hands got a same amount of time here. And then we'll bring the hands back to neutral. And we're going to reverse all that stretching. So come to the top of the left hand and gently circle around. Again, I'm not pressing into the mat here. I'm just gently reversing all that stretch. And I'm going to shake out my left hand before moving to the top of the right. And then go ahead and shake out that right hand. As we move back into table, we're going to move through 3 rounds of cat-cows. We did those seated cat-cows. The idea is the same here. So as we inhale, we're going to feel the tailbone reach back, the belly extends, the heart lifts forward, presses between the arms, and we look up. I'm going nice and slow. Exhale, my navel pulls up and in. I feel the back of my spine press toward the ceiling, and the chin lowers down. 2 more times, nice and slow. Remember, it's not about dropping the belly on the inhale, but about extending, lifting, pulling the heart through the arms. And then belly pulling up and in as though someone has a string coming up through the back, pressing up to the ceiling. 1 more time. And inhale back through table. I'm going to just walk you through a couple of plank variations here. We're not going to be spending too much time in them, but just about some alignment cues here. So walking the hands a step or 2 in front, I'm going to tuck my toes. I'm going to lift one knee and step it back and step the opposite back. So my wrists, my shoulders are still over my wrists here. And a lot of time in plank, people tend to dip the pelvis down or reach it way, way up like this. So what we want to do is have a plank position, right? We want to look like a nice straight line. So my belly is pulling up toward the ceiling. My heels are lifted, but they're pressing toward the back of the mat. And I'm still pressing the mat away between my shoulders, but I'm not lifting all the way up. I'm slightly bringing my chest between the shoulders to rest here. I'm not looking back at the feet. I'm not looking forward. The neck is neutral. If this is too much with the knees lifted, please bring the knees down. And I'll show you how you can do this in a modified position. This isn't table. Our hips are not over the knees. That's why I walk the hands a step or 2 in front. So we can bring the shoulders over the wrists. I have to adjust my knees a little bit here. And my hips are forward of my knees. My knees are slightly back. You can have your toes tucked if that feels okay. And again, I'm not pressing, I am pressing the mat away through the hands, but I'm not pressing my shoulder blades up. They're resting in between the shoulder. My chest is resting between the shoulders. My belly is still pulling in, and I'm looking forward. Same exact stretch and strengthening. We're just modifying it. Makes it a little easier. It's easy to lose the breath in plank, and we don't want to lose the breath here. We want to maintain the breath throughout our practice. So go ahead, come back into table, maybe shake out the hands for a moment. That's as much as we're going to do in plank today. And we're going to be coming into a downward facing dog. So again, hands walk a step or 2 in front. Spread the fingers wide. Tuck the toes. Fingertips are spread wide. We're going to take a breath in. And as we exhale, we're going to lift the hips up and back. My knees are going to stay bent. We're not even going to worry about getting the heels down to the mat. As the head comes back and releases between the arms, I'm going to let the neck and head go, looking back at the feet. My heels are still lifted, knees are still bent. I feel big extension from the tailbone reaching up to the crown of the head reaching down. So take a moment here and think about how you're gripping the mat with your hand. I have my fingertips lifted off the mat right now. I don't want you to lift your fingertips, but I'm just trying to prove a point. We're not gripping the mat with the fingers. I'm pressing into the base of my pointer finger, base of my thumb. So I'm using the palm, pressing into the mat, pressing it away to find that big extension through the spine. And now I'm going to start to pedal out my feet, lifting and lowering the heels, one at a time. Just bringing some space into the back of the body, opening up the legs. My belly is pulling up and in with gravity. And then I'm going to bring my feet to stillness. My heels can be lifted, knees can be bent even. We really want to release and let go of the neck here, so you can shake out the head, no. And then shake it out, yes. And then find stillness. Notice where you're engaging in the hands. Press the mat away through those active arms. And then take a moment here. This is a resting position. So throughout a practice, if you need to find a resting spot, this is one of them. I'm going to go over a few others in just a moment. But it is a little intense. So we'll take one more breath in. As we exhale, we're going to lower the knees, coming back into table. Shake out the hands if you need to. So downward facing dog, one resting position. We're going to come into child's pose, which is a great one, but it can be a little bit of strain on the knees. So when I come into child's pose, I like to do it with a wide leg position, so my heart has more room to go to the floor, but you see people that can keep the knees tucked under, so I'll demonstrate both ways. Feet together, knees together, belly on the thighs, head comes down to the mat. You can see I'm coming into a compressed little ball here, but I like to have more room for my heart and spine to extend down. So I like to bring the big toes together, knees out to the long edges of the mat, and then bum to the heels, chest between the legs, forehead down, arms extended. Really lovely. However, you can notice this puts a lot of stretch into the knees, which isn't, useful or accessible for everyone. So we can take a block for this and create a little bit more room. You'll notice that the block has 3 settings. The small one, the medium, and the tall. Generally, I like to use the medium setting for a block in child's pose, but the flat setting may work well for you also. So then the medium setting, I'm just going to take it between my legs underneath the bum. Feet can be framing. You can still have the knees fairly wide here. I'm just sitting right up on the block. And this, having the bum higher here, is going to put less stress, less gravity down onto the legs and knees. So we can walk the hands forward and start to release the heart down. This is still a pretty big stretch here for the upper body and for these back muscles. If you don't want to come down as far, we can always have another block to rest the forehead on. Or if you only have one block available, I like to stack fists and rest the forehead here. So we're still able to release, let go, and relax, but we have a little bit more support to help us from just dropping down to the floor and maybe overextending or straining. So we're going to go over a couple more resting positions. We're going to come back to downward facing dog. So in table, tuck the toes, hands walk a step or two in front, take a breath in. Exhale, downward facing dog. Just for a moment. Take a full breath. On your next inhale, look to the hands. And exhale, we're going to walk to the top of the mat, folding down over the feet, forward fold. So you can see my knees are deeply bent here. My belly is resting on the tops of my thighs, and my whole upper body is just letting go. I also have the weight in my heels, so my knees are bent. My knees are not coming forward. The weight is shifting back. As soon as you're able to release and let go of the shoulders, the neck, and the head, maybe starting to straighten the legs just a little bit. We can still have the knees slightly bent. We're just allowing gravity to extend the upper vertebrae of the spine and neck. And maybe here we help gravity along by grabbing opposite elbows. You're going to feel a little bit of extra weight come into the upper body. Maybe we even sway a little bit from side to side, creating a little bit more space. Just gentle movement. This is another great resting position, but we have to remember if we are ready to come up and out of it, you do so with a very big breath in so you don't get dizzy. We're actually going to come out of this in increments. So come to stillness, release the arms, bend a little deeper into the knees, weight is still in the heels, tuck the chin slightly into the chest. We're going to keep the upper body loose and limp and hanging. Our first breath, we're going to slowly start to straighten the legs, beginning to lift. Pause and exhale. Upper body still limp and hanging. Next breath in, straightening the legs all the way. Starting to engage the belly for support. Upper body still limp and hanging. Breathing in all the way up. Rounding the spine up. Shoulders will come to the ears. Exhale, slide them down the back. This brings us right into mountain pose, another great resting position. So I'm going to workshop mountain a little bit for you here, and then I'm going to turn to face the camera. Mountain, and if we were to fully engage and hold mountain for like 10 minutes, I can't remember the statistics, but it's almost like the equivalent of like running a mile or something really crazy. So it's a great position, a great posture, and it's very strengthening. So we start with the feet about hip distance, and that doesn't mean that the feet are underneath the hips, these hips. I'm thinking about these bony little sit bones here, so they're generally like underneath. So the feet are usually a little bit closer than you think they would be. Lift and spread the toes. That's going to create a wider base to support you. And then you can have a soft bend to the knees here. But if you want to fully engage through the legs, or if it's within your practice to have straight legs, make sure those quads are very strong. And that we do that by lifting the kneecaps to engage the quad muscles. The pelvis neutralizes, so we're not pushing it forward. We're not sticking out our bum, but we're neutralizing the spine and the pelvis by dipping the tailbone down. That's going to automatically tuck your low belly in, and I talk about this a lot. Spine is tall, shoulders relaxed, chin parallel to the floor. Turn back to face you. And then arms out to the side. We want to stay active through the arms, but not straining through the shoulders. So we do that by really engaging through the fingertips, and the palms can be forward or in toward the body, wherever you want to direct your energy. That's your own personal choice. And as we stand here, really feel the feet root down. This is where our mountain pose comes in, because we're creating this solid, firm, supporting base, and then still allowing some expansion through the upper body, right? Through the lengthening through the crown of the head, through the action of the arms. If we want to engage a little deeper into the legs here, and you do this if the legs are straight, it's kind of hard with a soft bend to the knees because we don't want to jeopardize the knees by pressing out to the side. But if your legs are straight, we want to create an action without movement, as though we were trying to pull the mat apart between the feet. So you're going to feel the outsides of the legs turn on. You're not going to see much of a change. So this is me in a regular mountain, still strong, still supporting. Then this is engaging, starting to create that pulling out action. And this is where the strengthening comes in. But we remember, we're doing this so we can still connect with the breath. So if you're engaging so much that you can't breathe, soften a little bit, right? We're working with the breath here. And one more inhale. And then exhale, soften, relax. Go ahead, shake it all out. So we're starting to run into a lot of time for this practice, and this is a foundational class, so I definitely wanted to go over some of the most, things that you would see most often through classes, and I want to talk about safe alignment. But since we are a little short on time, we're going to cut it down just a little bit. So we were going to do some stuff in a low lunge, but we're going to move right into some of the standing postures just because they're very important, and I wanted to get some of those alignment cues out of the way. So on your long edge of the mat, we're going to come to step fairly wide apart. Not so wide that you're really falling out of balance and straining your inner thighs, but depending on how long your legs are, at least 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet or more. I have long legs, so I have a little bit more space. We're going to start with hands to the hips, and we're going to be setting up for warrior 2. So we're going to be starting with the right foot forward. I'm going to turn my right toes toward the top of the mat. My back foot is parallel right now, and you're going to see a lot of classes, the teacher, instructor will cue you to turn the back foot parallel. I've been trying to say more parallel because in all honesty, we want these back toes turned slightly forward. Not a lot, not straight toward the mat, but we want to make sure that the toes and the kneecap are going in the same direction. So it's just a very subtle turning in, not even quite a 45-degree angle, which we talk about in Warrior 1, which we'll get to in a minute. So you see in this position, my torso is still facing to the side, even though my front foot is forward. I'm going to bring my arms out to the side. So I need a little more space between my legs here. I know once I put my knee forward, I'm going to be really tight in my legs. This is just me personally, so I'm going to heel toe the back foot out just a little bit, and you can do this as well. Or conversely, if you're too far in the legs and want to come in, heel toeing that back foot in, just make sure those toes turn slightly inward. So I'm going to create a little more space. And you know, as you're a beginner, you don't have to quite get there, but eventually over time, you want the heels to be on the same line, right? So we're going to bring the arms out to the side. And before we start to bend into this front knee, tuck your hips underneath, just like we did in mountain. We lengthened the tailbone down and felt the low belly tuck in. That's going to help keep the spine nice and tall. Arms out to the side, relax the shoulders, take a breath in, look to the right fingertips. Active and strong in this left leg, so engage that quad. As we exhale, we're going to bend into the right knee. Again, we do not want the knee going past the ankle. So you can see here I'm letting off a little bit, which is totally fine. I still have a nice tall spine. My feet are both evenly grounding down. I'm really pressing into that baby toe side of the back foot as much as I am pressing into this right foot. Active through the fingertips. I'm not reaching forward. I know that looks pretty in some pictures, but we want the column of the spine to stay nice and tall. And as I create more space here, checking in with this knee, I want to make sure it's not dipping into the center or out to the side, but tracking out over the center toes. And as more space opens up, I can start to draw the knee over the ankle. And you're going to feel this left hip turn on, so really making sure this leg is strong. It's easy to forget about this back leg here, but it is supporting us. It needs to work. So here we have it. Warrior two, lift the chin. Strong posture. You're going to feel the legs turn on. Breathing. And as we come out, slowly straighten that right leg. We'll bring the hands back to the hips and then heel toe the back foot in. So same thing for the left side. You could stay nice and wide on the mat. We're going to turn the left toes forward. Right toes turn slightly in. Hips tucking under. Arms out to the side, shoulders relaxed. Back leg engaged. Take a breath in. Exhale, look to the left foot and bend into that left knee, making sure it doesn't go past the ankle. I need to create more space in my legs. I'm going to heel toe the back foot out. Toes, again, slightly turning in so I can start to bring the knee over the ankle. Back leg strong, pressing into that baby toe side of the back foot as much as I am into this front foot. Spine is tall, shoulders relaxed, active fingertips. Breathing. Getting ready to come out. Inhale, straighten the front knee, hands to the hips. Heel toe the back foot in. Toes forward. And we can step together for a moment. Shake out the legs. So warrior two, right? Kind of easy, nice and strong. And there's a lot of different alignments that you can continue to check in if you choose to hold that posture and breathe and really allow yourself to go into it. So we're going to be coming from here into warrior one, which is similar to a high lunge, which is where we have the back heel lifted. But in warrior one, the heel is going to be grounded. So again, step fairly wide apart, not as wide as warrior two. So a little bit closer in. We're going to turn the right toes forward. This time we're going to turn those left toes forward, but this is where we get into that 45-degree angle stuff. And we can't say that because not all of our bodies are going to adjust to a 45-degree angle, but you do want the toes turning in a little bit more than they were in warrior two. So a little bit closer, about halfway between where they were in warrior two and toward the top of the mat. So you're going to see we do this because we want to square the hips off. That's why the toes need to be turning in more. So as we start to turn the torso forward, you're going to probably feel a little tight in the legs here until you start to create more space in the body and get used to this in your practice. So I'm going to heel toe my front foot out to the side so I have more space between the legs, more room to square off my hips. So right now I'm kind of in bad posture. I can feel it. My belly is tilting forward. My butt is sticking out. So first things first, I'm going to lengthen my tailbone down, pulling the belly in. I have a soft bend to my front knee, but my back leg is already very strong. So squaring off the hips, left hip is pulling back right now. You can see it's back, right hip is forward. I'm going to pull my right hip back. That's automatically going to pull that left hip forward. And again, you might have to adjust the feet here so that you're not straining. There we go. So my right hip is pulling back. Soft bend to this front knee. Again, my belly is dipping forward. Lengthen that tailbone, pull the belly in. So pressing those hip bones forward. I'm going to start with my hands to the heart in prayer. Take a breath in. Exhale, bend into that front knee. Look down, make sure it's not going past the ankle. So I'm going to create a little more space. I'm going to scoot my toes forward just for this demonstration. And again, as I come forward, I'm relaxing my belly. So tailbone long, belly pulling in, back leg strong. Knee over the ankle, tracking out over those center toes. And as I came forward, my hips slightly unsquared. So these micro adjustments as we breathe and settle into the posture are good. It's so good to come out of alignment in a safe way, right? We don't want to be out of alignment in a way that's going to do us harm. But it's good to keep adjusting because then your body gets to know, you know when it feels right. So hands are in the heart. If it feels okay here, right glute is strong, supporting me underneath. Left quad is engaged and strong, supporting me in the back. Maybe we reach the arms up to frame the ears. And if having this heel down is really straining you, I know this can be a lot into this back leg, it's okay to turn those toes forward and lift the heel. High lunge is very similar. The only difference is the heel and a little bit of the hips, but we'll get into that another time. So warrior one, we'll bring the hands back to the heart, my heel is down. Straighten that front leg, turn to the side, gently step together, and shake it out. Really quick on the left side. Stepping apart, not quite as wide. Left toes forward, right toes turning in, right, a little bit more. I just walk over here a little bit, sorry. Because as my right toes turn in, and I start to turn my torso forward, I'm going to create more space by heel toeing the left foot out, more space between the legs. Hands to the heart. Square off those hips, back leg strong, left knee slightly bent, spine long. Breathe in, exhale, bending into that left knee, stacking it over the ankle and over those center toes. Maybe the arms come up to frame the ears. Again, high lunge, we can center out those back toes and lift the heel if this is too much. Grounding the heel back down, squaring the hips off, hands come back into the heart. Left leg straightens, turn to the side, step together, shake it out. So warrior one, warrior two, we're going to briefly come into one balancing posture before we wind down here because I realize this is becoming a very long class. So when we're thinking about balancing postures, it's not about getting your leg way up into the air and doing all these crazy things with the arms. What it's about is engaging fully into the body, and that might mean that the toes still stay on the ground. So go ahead, shake out the legs. And I'll demonstrate with a block another time. We're going to not use a block today, but we're going to start with hands to the hips. We're going to shift our weight to the left leg. I'm going to use my right so I can mirror you. So shifting your weight to the left leg, soft bend to this right knee, and you can have a soft bend to the left knee as well. We're just going to start lifting the right foot in the air and getting used to the balance on that left foot. Ground into the toes, especially the big toe. And then we're going to open the knee out to the side and bring the toes down. So we're just opening a little bit. Try not to let the knee wobble all over, so your little circles might not be as wide here. But we do want to start opening that leg out to the side. So next time we're going to lift that right foot. And you can use your hand to open the knee to the side. And we can keep the toes right on the mat and place the foot to the inside of the ankle. You see how straightened this standing leg. Tree pose. Hands can come into the heart. I'm still balancing and I'm still grounded on both feet, right? So this balancing leg, I'm going to create very strong. I'm going to press my foot, even though the toes are on the mat, I'm going to press that foot into my standing leg. That's going to help me find some lift through the spine. Remember, tail long, belly tucking in, hands to the heart, tree pose. I'm still engaging. I can still feel myself working quite a bit here. And then soften. We can also do this opening the knee to the side. Foot can be placed below the knee joint. For some of you, maybe in the inner thigh, right? We never want to press on the side of the knee joint. This is a hinge joint. It doesn't go this way. It doesn't go that way. Don't do it. So same thing on the opposite foot. Shifting your weight into that right leg. Start with hands to the hips. Soft bend to the knees, lifting and lowering the left foot. Then beginning to open out to the side and circling. Making sure we're not wobbling too much in this leg, so maybe just some little circles. But we do want to open the knee, maybe using the hand as a guide. And then opening to the side. Toes can be on the mat, foot to the ankle, strong and powerful through the standing leg. Press the foot into the ankle. Maybe hands come into the heart. Maybe we reach all the way up. Spine is long, belly pulling in, but not clenching, right? Not clenching into the abdominals. Ground into that big toe. You can see I almost fall over. And breathing. Smile. It's okay to move a little bit, right? Trees move. So it's okay to have some movement here. And again, we can bring the foot below the knee or guide it to the inner thigh. We really want to press it into that standing leg and strong through that standing leg. Hip bone slightly pressing forward, breathing. And then go ahead and release. Shake out the legs. We're going to start to wind everything down now. Before we do so, I really hope this has been helpful with some alignment and just some tricks of the trade. Maybe you're just, again, revisiting some of this stuff for your own practice. But I'd really love some suggestions or comments. If you guys wanted to start a discussion, you can contact me through my website here or through YouTube. But really reach out to me. I want to be able to do more workshops like this, but I need to know what it is that you guys want to see and how I can serve you. So let me know if this was helpful. Like, even just be like, hey, I didn't like the part where you did this, or ever since you told me this, I've been feeling so much better in this posture. So please reach out. I love to start a conversation. So to come down nice and easy, walk to the top of the mat, mountain pose. On an inhale, we're going to reach the arms forward and up. Look up to the hands. Exhale, bring the hands into the heart. And as we start to bring the hands down, bend into the knees, weight shifting into the heels. And just slowly begin to fold down over the feet. Bend deeper into the knees, bring the hands down to the mat. Take a breath in. Exhale, step the right foot back. Then the left foot, high plank just for a second. Knees down to table. And then we'll cross the feet behind us. Bring the bum down to the mat and the feet forward. This is generally how I wind down most of my yoga classes. Nice and easy, keeps it fluid, keeps it flowy. So finding our half boat position. We'll come into boat another day. It's a nice core workout. Feet are planted, knees are bent, spine is nice and tall. Arms come out to the side, take a breath in. Exhale, I'm going to pull the navel way in because I'm going to start releasing my spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, down to the mat. Breathing the whole way, so taking several breaths to do this. This takes a lot of control, so maybe we bring the arms back and start releasing. We can extend the legs here if your arms are down. If not, keep the legs bent and gently release. Take a few breaths to allow the spine to neutralize to the mat. There's a few other things I wanted to get to today, but we'll save them for another time. So we're going to come right into Shavasana here, which we're pretty much already in our final relaxation position. But take a moment to walk your hip bones down so that the low spine is nice and long. Tuck your shoulder blades underneath the back. Palms can face the ceiling. And then a couple breaths here. Relax the belly. Relax the chest. Let the limbs be heavy. And the eyes can begin to soften or close. Stay in this position and I'll guide you through a brief Shavasana. So with your eyes closed or softened, start to find that natural rhythm and pace of breath again. Noticing how it feels within the body, especially compared to when we first began class. Noticing any differences, any similarities, anything new. And then as we start to wind everything down, we're going to take 3 controlled deep breaths. We're going to be taking them expansively in through the nose, and then long and controlled exhaling through the mouth. So beginning now, breathing in. Two more times using control. And let that last exhale take you again back to your natural pace of breath. We're going to allow the body to release and let go. We're going to release control of the breath and control of our thoughts as best as you can. This can often be the most difficult part of the practice for people, to just find complete stillness, but it is the most important part of our practice. It's when we can allow all the work we just did to settle into the body and then to release. So I challenge you, see how much you can let go here, how much you can surrender to this final posture. You can allow your breath to deepen again slowly, inviting awareness back to your body. Begin to wiggle out through the fingers and the toes. Maybe rocking the head gently from side to side. On an inhale, extend your arms up overhead. Point the toes to the bottom of the mat. Feel everything lengthen out. And exhale to soften. Release. Float the knees into the chest gently. We're still on our backs here. Give yourself a big squeeze. Maybe rock a little bit from side to side. And come back to center, giving yourself this hug. Find some words of gratitude and kindness and acceptance just for yourself, for your abilities, and for your decision to show up to the mat today. And whenever you're ready, roll to one side, doesn't matter which. And gently, with an inhale, make your way into a seated position. I like to end my practices with a round of Om. If you care to join me, I use a 4-part Om. The syllables A, U, and then the silence that follows. We'll bring the hands into the chest. We'll start by taking a big breath in and exhaling all the stale air. One more inhale for the Om. Again, I thank you so much for joining me here today. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste.